Hello, thank you for tuning into my channel. Today we're talking quilt repair. So if you want to see my ideas for how to repair a loved quilt, please stay tuned. Now the quilt that I'm going to show you, it was my very first jersey quilt. So if you have a quilt that you made and it starts to look like this after a while, do not take it personally. I have to tell myself that over and over again because this quilt has been loved, and every time I would go to the person's house, they would be snuggling under the quilt or it would be somewhere close to them. So I have to remember not to take it personally that the quilt looks like this. And the reason that I've been asked to repair it is because they love it so much that they just want it to stay whole. Okay, so let's take a look at the quilt. As you can see, it's been very loved. The main things that we're going to do today are do some repairs on these panels where it's broken. I'm going to take all of this off and repair it. And there's some spots where the batting is a little funky or missing, like right here. And so I'll be doing a little bit of batting replacement and replacing these panels. There's also a patch on the back right here, and I'm not 100% sure what would have happened, but I need to do some repairs on that as well. So as we get ready to look at this, I think the first thing to do, of course, is just to take some inventory. So I've come up with, I think that there are 12 panels that need to be replaced. So I'm going to be replacing those 12 panels and inserting batting where I need to. And I will go through step by step what I'm going to do to try to fix the quilt. I already repaired a couple of these blocks so that I can figure out the best method for how to handle this. For me, it's important to do one little block at a time because the measurements, since this quilt has been used, the measurements can be a little bit off from block to block. So let's quickly go over the materials that we need for a project like this. What I've chosen to do is I'm using, these are actually leftover jerseys from another quilt that I made from my husband's quilt. And so they're panels that I've actually kind of cut to size, and I'll show you how I figure out the size in just a minute. I'm also using a stabilizer. When you are repairing a quilt, since this quilt has been washed and everything, you want to make sure that you use fabric that you have pre-washed. If this was a fresh quilt that was just being made, of course it wouldn't matter as long as it's all the same. But since these fabrics have been washed, wash your fabrics before you try to do a repair. Whatever fabrics you're going to use to patch this up, wash it. Since these are old jerseys, of course they've been washed, and they were actually in my husband's quilt. These are my son's jerseys that have been cut up and they were used in another quilt, and so I'm going to use them to patch up this jersey quilt. To determine the size of these and to help with stabilizing these jersey fabrics because they're very stretchy, I'm actually using a stabilizer that you can press into place. It has an adhesive on it, and you use the iron to adhere it to the fabric. This is Pellon. It's like number 809 or something like that. So it is an iron-on stabilizer, and when I get ready to put it into a position, like I'm going to do this one next. Now let me find it. This is our next piece. And so what I did to determine the size of the stabilizer is I just measured from seam line to seam line. So measure using my tape measure. So I measured here and here, and then I measured to the seam line on either side. And that tells me how big to make the stabilizer. And I'll show you here, because this is the piece that I'm going to insert. I actually used two pieces and kind of patched them together to adhere it to the stabilizer. Make sure that you read the directions on how to stabilize this. I actually had to use a damp pressing cloth and iron it to adhere. And then what I'm doing now is first I used the stabilizer on a huge piece of fabric, and then I cut it down until there's about a 1/2 inch on either side. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin it all around, and I've already started that. You see I've already folded it under and pinned. Okay, and then I'm going to actually baste it into place on this piece before I sew it, stitch it down. I'm also going to put, I'm not sure about the condition of this batting, but I know that it has some little funky spots in it. So I'm going to also insert a piece of batting. This is just leftover from another project, probably leftover from the jersey quilt. And in order to determine how big the batting is going to be, I actually measured from the inside of the fabric across and this way. So instead of going to the seam line for the batting, I'm just going on the inside, and so this batting is just going to fit right in here like this. So my next step is going to be, after I get this pinned, it's going to be to baste it. Use a running stitch, with a needle and thread, and just baste this into place, and then I'll go to the sewing machine. So I'll show you that, and then we'll stitch it down. Basted around the edge of my panel here that's going to be patched onto the quilt. So from this point, I'm just going to go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch along this edge here and just try to cover that previous stitch line. And mostly I'll get it, but if I don't, that's okay. I have my walking foot on my machine, and I think I'm going to start in the middle of one of the lines. And it's so heavy. And then I'll back stitch, and then I'll go through the rest of it. And this is kind of a slow process. I'm wearing my quilting gloves because the fabric is it's pretty slippery, so I need a good grip on it. So I'm just gonna start here with a back stitch, and I'm just kind of carefully watching to make sure that I am just over those previous stitches. And for this, it's not a big deal if the stitches get small, because they're gonna do that as the at these little seams, because of the how thick the fabric is. But I'll just kind of go as fast as I can, being sure to cover that other stitch line. And then I'm kind of lining it up here on the corner to make sure that I can. This is an especially thick part. So thick right here with this corner, because of that 1/2 inch of excess fabric. It does go slower there. So at this point I've reached the corner, and I'm going to turn and kind of push the rest of this quilt through the machine so I can do the other sides. And I'll get all 3 sides done, and then I'll show you how it looks when I'm done. Here is the finished panel that I have done. I really like the way it turned out. I am going to run a line of quilting probably through the middle to stabilize the batting that's in there. And I have to finish this whole thing. I'll put some pictures at the end so that you can see what it looked like before and what it looks like afterwards. If you have any questions about this process, please leave them below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!